So I've been sitting with authenticity and vulnerability. It's been marinating, y'all. It's been marinating. Am I the only one? Okay, I see some head shaking. No, I am not alone. Okay, that's good to know. Because let me tell y'all, I had a whole nother sermon planned for today. A whole nother sermon. But if I'm going to be authentic, and I am, I have to share what's on my heart today. I have to share what's on my heart today. So during the height of COVID-19, when we were all shut in, I started going over to check on my aunt. And many of you know, I talk about my aunt quite often. She lives alone and she's my mother's younger sister, and she just turned 82 on April 12th. So she's 82 years old. She lives alone and she has a lot of health challenges. So I started taking her to her doctor's appointments and making sure that her medication was set up and, you know, going shopping for her and running errands for her, doing the things that need to be done for her. And it's been about 3 years now that this has been going on. And I recently shared at our Hour of Power support group this week that although I feel frustrated at times, I feel frustrated at times about the situation with my aunt, I'm also extremely grateful that my life is structured in a way now that allows me to support her, because my life was not always structured this way. I used to work very long hours at nonprofit organizations as a human resources executive. It was almost a 24-hour job at times. So now my life is different. My life is structured in a way that I am more available to be of service to her. So I'm grateful for all of that. I'm grateful for all of it. I don't take any of it for granted. So yesterday, my aunt fell and I took her to the hospital. And the physician's assistant came in and never looked at my aunt, never looked at her. She took, you know, she checked all her vitals, she did all the things, but she never looked at her. And I was especially present to this because of today's topic, seeing and being seen. And so after the physician's assistants finished, a nurse practitioner came in and she asked basically the same questions that the physician's assistant asked. She did the same things that the physician's assistant did. And like the physician assistant, she never really looked at my aunt. They directed questions about her to me. And for the most part, I was quiet because I wanted to give my aunt space to speak for herself. And then the doctor came in. He didn't even acknowledge her. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't say his name, nothing. So I said, "Who are you?" Because just because you come in with well, he didn't even have on a white coat. He had on his regular clothes. Just because you come in, don't, like, who are you? Right? So he introduced himself. I told him that this was my aunt, that I'm her niece. And then he went on to examine her and do all the things. And he wanted to know what happened and all of that. Again, barely looked at my aunt, except for when he was examining her. And as I thought about it, this happens pretty often. I take my aunt to a doctor's appointment at least once or twice a week. And it really dawned on me yesterday that she is not being seen, right? So we go to the doctor to be seen. Literally, we go to the doctor to be seen. She's not being seen, right? And I had such a feeling of unease about this all day yesterday. And I kept thinking about what happened. And at some point, I told myself that, you know what, let's put this to the side for a moment and let's finish working on the sermon. And then I had the realization that what I had been witnessing all day was my sermon being played out through my aunt. And then I started thinking, what must it be like for my aunt? What must it be like for other seniors? Because I know this is not unique to her, to not be seen. To not be seen, right? And I started wondering if she sees it, if she sees that she is not being seen, fully seen as a human being. I started wondering about that. And then I had to sit with myself and I asked myself the question, because we're practicing being vulnerable, right? Do I see my aunt? Do I see her? And if I do see her, how do I see her? How do I see her? And if I'm being really honest with myself, I allowed myself to really tap into that vibration of vulnerability by sitting in that state that Brene Brown talks about, that state of emotional exposure, uncertainty, and risk. Because I have to confess that oftentimes I don't see her. I don't. And the way that I realized I was seeing her was through the lens of inability and limitations, just like the staff at the hospital. And I have to say that I felt such shame about it. I felt such shame about it because it's easy to judge others, right? But then we have to take and look at ourselves and see how we are seeing or not seeing each other, and how we are seeing and not seeing ourselves. So I felt a lot of shame last night. And I just decided, you know what, just sit in it. Just sit in the feeling, because shame is not who I am, it's a feeling that I'm having, right? And we know that with our feelings that there's information there, right? We know that the origins of the word vulnerable means to wound. And in the wound, there is healing. So there is healing here. There is healing here. So I invite you to think about a situation in your life. It might be a relationship that you're currently in where you are not fully seeing the person, that you're just going along, right? But not being fully present with who they fully are. And so I used a quote this week for our graphic for our topic, vulnerability, seeing and being seen. And the quote is by Jim Carrey. And Jim Carrey said, Jim Carrey, if y'all don't know, is very deep. He is he's on the spiritual path, y'all. He's just not jokes and comedy. He said, risk being seen in all your glory. Risk being seen in all your glory. So we know that Brene Brown's definition of vulnerability, that risk is a part of that. It's one of the elements of being vulnerable. Risk being seen in all of your glory. Do I see my aunt in all of her glory? Do you see yourself in all of your glory? Do I see myself in all of my glory? And just based on this experience, I was not seeing my aunt in all her glory. I wasn't seeing my aunt as glorious. My view of her was a small fraction of who she truly is. So I woke up this morning and I was saying my morning prayers, and this song popped up in the middle of my prayer, and I started singing it. And we are familiar with this song. It's a New Thought song. I am as God created me, in the light, in the love, in the glory. I am as God created me, in the light, in the love, in the glory. And then we say, in the light, in the love, in the glory of God, I am. So I'm singing this song this morning, and the tears are just flowing, and I'm thinking about my aunt, and I'm thinking about seeing her as the glory of God. So with all that's going on with her, can I take the risk of seeing her in all her glory? Can I be vulnerable and just allow her to be, just as she is? Because sometimes I fuss at her for being just as she is, right? I fuss at her. I'm like, could you just do this, right? So are you willing to risk being seen in all of your glory, no matter what is going on in your life, no matter what challenges you are facing with yourself or even with other people in your lives? Are you willing to be vulnerable and risk being seen in all of your glory? Are you willing to risk seeing the glory in others when they are doing things that, quite frankly, piss you off and frustrate you, right? Can we meditate on the truth of who we are? So, as I said, I had a totally different sermon, but I follow my heart. And I woke up early this morning, did the prayer, the song came through. I went in my office, and this whole download of the sermon came this morning. And I was directed to the Science of Mind text. And I want to read this to you. Ernest Holmes writes in the Science of Mind text. And this is on page 419, if anyone wants to go back and look at it later. Since we see that personality is what one does with his individuality, we should turn within. We should turn within and find God. Turn within and find God. Because we as personalities are going to do what we do. As individuals in our individualization, right? We're going to do what we do. But we can also turn within and find the indwelling spirit, the indwelling God that resides within each one of us, because we know that we are the individualization of God. We are that unique expression of life itself. So what would it be like to turn within and find God within my aunt instead of seeing her limitations? What would it be like for you to turn within and find God within yourself instead of just seeing your limitations? What would it be like to turn within and find God within the people that are your family, your friends, your co-workers, your neighbors, everyone? What would it be like to turn within and find God in everyone? Being seen requires seeing ourselves and seeing each other through our spiritual eyes. So early this morning, as I thought about yesterday, and I closed my physical eyes and I meditated on my aunt and I brought her to my mind, I had that opportunity to see her through the spiritual eyes that are God's eyes, to turn within and to see her in the fullness of who she is, to imagine how God sees her, And I know that God doesn't see her as a limitation, as broken. We turn within and we find God within each and every one of us. So this also brought to mind a passage. I've been reading the Gospel of Thomas. I have it down here. Oh, you probably can't, because of the background, you can't see it. But the Gospel of Thomas, the Gnostic Wisdom of Jesus, and it's by Jean V's Leloup. I just killed his name. He's French. That was my attempt at French, y'all. Jean-Yves Leloup. Okay. So he wrote the Gospel of Thomas. And if you're not familiar with the Gnostic teachings of Jesus and some of the Gospels that were uncovered in Upper Egypt in 1945, it was unearthed. All of these scrolls were unearthed at a place in Upper Egypt that was an ancient Masonic community. And this library that was unearthed contained basically 53 texts, and they were written in an ancient Egyptian language, and they had been translated into different languages. So the Gospel of Thomas is a collection of 114 sayings, and they call the sayings logions. And those logions are believed to contain the teachings of Jesus the Christ that was written by Thomas. And Thomas was one of Jesus' closest disciples. And whenever, this is a sidebar, y'all, whenever there's something with one of the disciples, I always check out the metaphysical symbolism of their names. And so Charles Fillmore does a great job of explaining the metaphysical symbolisms. And so there's a book called the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. And he breaks down all of the names in the Bible through a metaphysical lens. And it's very powerful to have this deeper understanding, because it's just not a name. There's meaning behind all of our names, right? There's a vibration in all of our names. So Thomas represents the understanding faculty in man, in all of us. It's understanding and will function or should function in unison. Understanding and will should be functioning in unison together. So Thomas represents the reasoning and the intellectual perception and discernment of the thing of spirit through outer signs, right? And the Gospel of Thomas reveals that we always carry within ourselves an infinite space, which is the same within and without. It is said that all that is needed is to break open the man-made jar that hides it from us. So it's all contained within us, and we just have to break open to it. So the essence of this gospel is to awaken us to our true state of consciousness, as within, so without, as above, so below, on earth as it is in heaven. So in other words, to see ourselves as God sees us, in the consciousness of oneness and love. So Jesus taught mainly through parables and paradoxes. And the commentary from the Logions is provided through the author. And so there's one that I want to share with you to just anchor us in this power of being seen and seeing. So the Logion goes like this. It's Logion 81, and it says this: whoever has become rich, may he become king. Whoever has power, may he renounce it. Whoever has become rich, may he become king. Whoever has power, may he renounce it. So this is said to be the teachings of Jesus the Christ. So in essence, what is being taught is we can't renounce something that we do not truly possess. So the rich became king, and then they can renounce it, having had the experience of being king and having had the experience of power. So some of the commentary that the author provides is a metaphor about the caterpillar and the butterfly. The butterfly's purpose is to complete or fulfill the caterpillar's destiny. The butterfly's purpose is to complete or fulfill the caterpillar's destiny. Likewise, the stage of the union of the divine and our human natures is to first become fully and simply human. So before we could surrender our ego, we must have an ego to surrender. And if you're human, you have an ego. And if you believe you don't have an ego, you are fooling yourself. We all have an ego, right? So this is one of the dangers encountered by those who commit themselves to a spiritual path. This is what the author is sharing. They may imagine they are transcending the ordinary human stage of existence, whereas they have yet to live it fully. So in this teaching, Jesus is advising us to fully recognize our worldly potential, symbolized by becoming wealthy and powerful, so as to truly see the vanity of this achievement. For if we hold back, we will harbor the bitter illusion of having missed something. So the butterfly does not come into being by crushing the caterpillar. Instead, the latter must be allowed to grow in order to reach the threshold of mutation, of passage into another form, the butterfly. For the caterpillar to transmute into a butterfly, it must be vulnerable to transformation. The butterfly fulfills the destiny of the caterpillar. The caterpillar turns within through the process of metamorphosis, and then is being seen as the butterfly. When we turn within and find God, we can see with our spiritual eyes that in our humanness, we fulfill God's destiny through and as us. We can't hold back being fully human. To be vulnerable is to be fully human. To feel frustration is to be fully human. To be fully human. So the caterpillar can't hold back its butterflyness, if you will. It can't hold it back. Just like we can't hold back our humanness. And we can't hold back our divineness. It is who and what we are. We need to see our humanness in ourselves and in each other, and we need to see each other's divineness. I was not seeing my aunt's divineness. I wasn't. So I had to see my aunt's humanness in the fullness of who she is and not in the limitations of her ailments. It was an opportunity to see my aunt as the fulfillment of God's destiny. To allow myself to be vulnerable and risk seeing her in all of her glory, no matter what. Ooh. no matter what. That takes practice. That takes practice. Ernest Holmes also writes in the Science of Mind text on page 503, we shall see with the spiritual eye that dims not, with a clear sight that penetrates all opposites and announces the ever-present reality. We shall see ourselves as we really are, forever held in the bosom of the universe. We shall see ourselves as the children of God, being seen through our spiritual eyes by turning within and finding God and meditating on who we fully are, fully human and fully divine. Turn within and find God within yourself and find God within others. It takes being vulnerable to live fully in our humanness. Are you willing to go there? Are you willing to go there? Are you willing to experience the emotional exposure, the uncertainty, the risks required to truly see yourself and to be willing to be more fully seen? After all of this came through, I was like, I don't want to say all that. What, God? What? No. Are you willing to be more fully seen? If you are, it requires to step fully into vulnerability. It also requires to turn within and find God within yourself, to find God within others. It requires to stop hiding behind limitations, our own and others that we perceive. It requires that we stop hiding behind the story. It especially requires that we stop living half alive. We are here to live fully alive. Fully alive. We never know what gift life is waiting to give us if we're not willing to be vulnerable by living in our humanness and our divineness. What I know more deeply now, today, than I knew yesterday, is that we need each other to fulfill our destiny as human beings. Our purpose is to fulfill the destiny of God through our humanness. And that, my beloveds, requires vulnerability to see and be seen, to turn within and find God, to be vulnerable in your humanness, to risk being seen in all your glory. Are you willing? Are you willing? So I want to close this with a spiritual mind treatment from Ernest Holmes that's in the Living the Science of Mind book. And as I share this, I just invite you to turn within and find God. Find the indwelling spirit that you are. And you could bring to mind maybe a situation that's similar to what I just shared. Maybe a situation where you have been distancing yourself from someone being their full human self. Or maybe bring to mind yourself. Turn within and find God as you. So let's just go within and take a breath. And let us know this together. I know there is a power for good, which is responding to me and bringing into my experience everything that is necessary to my unfoldment, to my happiness, to my peace, to my health, and to my success. I know there is a power for good that enables me to help others and to bless the whole world. So I say quietly to myself, there is one life. That life is God. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. It is flowing through me, circulating in me. I am one with its rhythm. My heart beats with the pulsation of the universe, in serenity, in peace, and in joy. My whole physical being is animated by the divine spirit. And if there is anything in it that does not belong, it is cast out because there is one perfect life in me now. And I say to myself, I am daily guided so that I shall know what to do under every circumstance and every situation. Divine intelligence guides me in love and joy and in complete self-expression. Desiring the law of good alone shall control me. I bless and prosper everything I am doing. Desiring the law of good alone shall control me. I bless and prosper everything I am doing. I multiply every activity. I accept and expect happiness and complete success. Recognizing that I am one with all people, I affirm that there is a silent power flowing through me and them, which blesses and heals and prospers, makes happy and glad their pathway. And realizing that the world is made up of people like myself, I bless the world and affirm that it shall come under the divine government of good, under the divine providence of love, and under the divine leadership of the supreme intelligence. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And so it is.